مرحبا بكم في Abra Talks. Welcome to Abra Talks. Bienvenidos a Abra Talks. ברוכים הבאים ל-Abra Talks. Bienvenue sur Abra Talks. Benvenuti su Abra Talks.
In this episode, I welcome Nada Majdalali, Palestine Director of EcoPeace. Nada was born in Bulgaria, but now lives and works in Ramallah, where she's managing the local office of this multi-awarded NGO, founded in 1994 between Egyptian, Jordanian, Israeli, and Palestinian environmentalists. Nada's testimony is demanding and challenging, and highlights another reality in the region, that of the protection of the environment, which is inextricably linked with peace. Enjoy watching and listening. Hi Nada, I'm very happy to host you on this Abra Talks conversation. I discovered you while I was doing some research on climate security in the Middle East and on EcoPeace, the NGO you were working for as Palestine Director. I'm very proud to say that you are our first Palestinian guest and that this means a lot to me personally, especially in the ongoing context. So thank you for accepting my invitation to talk about a major issue in the region, which has so many impacts on both the peoples and the lands. We will dive more into the issue of climate security and of the environment during the interview, and I will let you, of course, tell us more about EcoPeace, its vision, its ambition. But I can already tell that the work you are doing is very inspiring and very demanding. But first, I would like to start with your personal background. Can you tell us more about your origins, Nada, and where were you born?
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to anyone who's listening to this recording. And thank you for hosting me. And I can't be more proud to be the first Palestinian on this podcast. I hope that I'll represent my people well, but also represent, let's say, an out-of-the-box thinking of the current reality in the region and hopes that my people and my country will be in a different place somehow in the near future. I'm originally from Safad. It's a city now in Israel proper, and my elder family and ancestors, they come from this city and they were expelled in 1948. Then my father's family, they were refugees in Syria. And then my father met my mom, who is originally Lebanese Syrian, and they eventually gave birth to me in Bulgaria, in Sofia. So I lived as many Palestinians in diaspora, refugees, from growing up from one place to another. So I grew up in Bulgaria, then moved to Libya, then moved to Tunisia, and finally after the Oslo Accords signing, we came back to Palestine. So it was for me and even for my father, it was the first time we set foot in Palestine after the Oslo Accords. It was a very hopeful moment. Because especially for refugees, the right of return is something very, very important to us, Palestinians, to finally have stability and call a place as home. No matter how settled you are in somewhere else, calling a place home and your country as your own home is something totally different. It gives you a different emotion and different connection. So this is my short version of the story. My background, so I studied biology here in Palestine in Birzeit University. And then I did my master's degree in environmental management in Oxford Brookes University in the UK. And later I worked in organizations and capacity building, in technical assistance for small medium enterprises, for infrastructure projects, all relevant to development and infrastructure. I found myself here in EcoPeace as the Palestinian director since 2017. I joined EcoPeace with full enthusiasm. And we can talk more about this. What else?
Has your family shaped your academic background? Did they influence you in the choice you made as studying biology and then environmental studies? And was it evidence for you to become an environmentalist and to work in this field?
Not really. My father is a politician and my mom is an economist.
Okay.
So they both had different tracks, and they actually didn't foresee that I would choose this. They influenced my shaping and my understanding, basically, to the peace building aspect, because my father is a strong believer in a peaceful solution for Palestinians and Israelis. And he has worked on this track for several years. He's someone who's also very peaceful, calm person who also put me on the track that there must be a different way other than killing and violence and a violent approach to doing things. She's a very rational person. What shaped my opinion towards environmental issues is basically my teacher. So when I was in school, in high school here in Palestine, it was the beginning of course, the peace process, and after the Oslo Accords, there were several environmental peace building camps. And my teacher, she was very active. She selected students to go on camps between Palestinian and Israeli children to learn about their shared environment. So the issue of environmental peace building was something that I grew up with since I was a child. And eventually now I'm the director of the peace building organization. And here's why the educational program of EcoPeace Middle East is probably the most and the dearest program to my heart, because I know how transformative and influential to each and every individual, especially to youth. Yeah, eventually this environmental issues and peace building issues, they're really combined, and they are actually now one of the most hot topics that are even on the plates of decision makers. When we speak about climate security, environmental security, it's not on the level of education, it's not on the level of NGOs, it's on the level of top agenda of world leaders and even security establishments.
Maybe if you let me precise for our audience, so EcoPeace is the first joint initiative of Egyptian, Jordanian, Israeli, and Palestinian environmentalists. And it's also a multi-awarded NGO, especially in Europe and in the US. And as you mentioned, this NGO has a specific vision, which is furthering sustainable development and peace as a common goal at the same time for the region. So we can understand with you explaining to us how the issue of climate security and peace is so linked. They are so linked together. So you joined this organization in 2017, as you said. I just want you to explain maybe more in details to our audience, what does it mean concretely on the ground, integrating the environmental considerations into the regional agenda, especially in the current context when we are talking about global warming and all about the underlying subtopics arising from it. So the question of natural resources, energy, agriculture. Maybe can you explain it a little bit more?
That's a huge question. Let's take this until tomorrow morning. I'll try to explain briefly. So, in principle, in terms of working on the ground on these issues, you need to work on various levels and you need to touch upon the various sects of the society. And this is basically the strategy of EcoPeace Middle East. You mentioned we started as an organization of Jordanian Palestinians, Israelis, and Egyptians. Unfortunately, the Egyptian part, 1998, has been forced to close the office at that time. So we continued to work as Palestinian, Israeli, Jordanian. In our strategy, as you mentioned, it is very crucial to understand the geopolitical setup and to understand the issues on the ground and to act, as I mentioned, on various levels. So what we start with is basically understanding the conditions on the national level for each of our countries, and to understand the realities in water security, energy security, food security, agriculture, etc., and the impacts of climate change. So it starts with a lot of data collection on a local level, in community level, working, of course, with our local governments, and as well as with municipalities and community leaders, youth, etc. Then it also transcends to education and building awareness and engaging with the people on the ground in order to also provide a compelling picture of how our realities and climate change reality and environmental issues are interconnected. And this requires, of course, working with mass numbers. So we have a large-scale educational program where we provide content and curriculum to teachers in the 3 countries to provide national context, but also the regional context of the importance on collaborating on shared environmental problems and shared environmental concerns. And then we have to work, of course, with our governments and with our leadership and with our policy makers. This also requires education because with the many years of conflict, and now that the situation is even more dark and there are years of this conflict, I would say that there needs to be a lot of education on the leadership level, that cooperation and collaboration on environmental and water security and energy security matters are essential and very important. First of all, to address the day-to-day issues when it comes to water supply to Palestinian communities that are fully controlled somehow, let's say, by the Israeli military and the Israeli control. When it comes to the energy security, where also we are very much dependent, for example, as Palestinians, on sources and energy sources from Israel. We're talking about 95% of our energy supply is from the Israeli side. When all these dependencies and also types of control that are also imposed on the Palestinians because of the occupation, then we understand also that a neighbor that is not getting their full share of the natural resources, that they don't have control, that they have all this pressure. Leave aside the security issues and the security pressure and the army and the occupation. Let's speak about the day-to-day life of the Palestinians. A neighbor who is unhappy about their electricity supply, a neighbor that is no access to water, is certainly not a happy neighbor, and a neighbor that would hold antagonism towards the other side. And this is also something that we try to make all the sides understand. From another perspective, we also look at the issues like pollution and transboundary water pollution and streams. We look at, for example, the issues where Palestinians need to treat wastewater and enabled to treat wastewater that could have a transboundary pollution impact. On the Israeli side, we look at the Jordan River as one of very important sources of the region, where Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israelis require to share responsibility to protect the river, to rehabilitate it, and to protect it from pollution. So all these things and all these aspects require a lot of education on the policy level and policy change level, but also, as I mentioned, to address the day-to-day needs and the moment and immediate needs on the ground, but also to think outside the box and to utilize water and environmental issues as a low-hanging fruit, and to utilize them as building bridges between people, and to utilize them as building bridges and common language and interest between policymakers and decision makers, or at least influencers to policymakers, and hopefully utilize environmental and water issues as a peace building tool to at least solve issues that can be solvable. And if we could agree on one thing, we could possibly agree on more difficult other things. And water is one of the issues that today can be solvable and agreeable. And then it comes to looking into out-of-the-box ideas for the future and how we can utilize this agenda into emphasizing the two-state solution agenda. Is this dream basically for Palestinians, the establishment of the state of Palestine. For Israel, the importance is security. This is also the language that we utilize in Israel, where it is their main concern. For Palestinians, the main concern is freedom, self-determination, all these issues. And for Jordanians, it's also important, the stability, political stability of the region, but also economic stability and economic interests. So it's important, as I mentioned, to look at the national needs, national concerns, and to look also
The local ones.
The common things that bring us together, the mutual interest that we can build on together to help us understand that we have common responsibility towards each other and towards the environment.
It's very interesting because you mentioned the geopolitical and the political impact on all these issues. I would like to ask you, because from a Western perspective, what we see when we are looking at the issue of the environment, the protection of environment, the use of natural resources in Eastern societies or in Eastern countries, we see that our use of natural resources, of materials, differ completely. For example, if we're looking at the use of plastic, and maybe it's a common feeling that Western people can have when they're seeing what's happening in Eastern societies. Some of them think, okay, maybe Eastern countries don't take into consideration seriously the topic of environmental concern. Do you think that this topic, that of protection of the environment, is something very cultural and which needs to be addressed according to specific parameters, not only geopolitical, as you mentioned, but as well according to social, cultural, or geographical maybe parameters? Do you think that this is something which needs to be addressed from a specific perspective, or that this is a universal concern, so it needs to be addressed from a universal perspective? What do you think about it?
Well, certainly, I think it needs to be addressed on a universal level because eventually, I mean, all the investments that are made during COP and the climate conference and all these gatherings that happen globally and on a global level on environmental issues, I think yes, it does start on the level of education, awareness, implementing things on the ground by individuals, by communities, increasing the bubble towards countries. It all requires a reciprocal relationship between the responsibility of the individual and the culture and the policies on place and the financial tools and the programs and et cetera, that would enable the individual to implement these issues and to address them. So in that sense, actually, I was watching a documentary the other day with my daughter, and you mentioned plastic and why I think it's a global issue. I was watching this documentary and it's about biodiversity and the life of animals and their reproduction and food systems in different times of the year. And this was this isolated island around, I think, 20,000 kilometers away from Hawaii, where nobody lives there. And there are lots of unique types of birds. And the amount of plastic in this, uninhabited island is enormous. And the birds eat it and they eventually die. This is an uninhabited island, and this plastic is traveling the ocean, which means that someone across the ocean is using a lot of plastic, and this person is an individual, and this individual is not being held responsible by the country and by its policy for throwing plastic garbage into the sea. It broke my heart, and I am thousands of miles away. It broke my heart that human beings are irresponsible towards their own world, towards precious things that we take for granted. So I do think that environmental issues are global issues. They need to be powered and governed by policies, and they need to be transboundary, and they need to look beyond the borders, and it's all geopolitical and it's all economic as well. It's all governed by big corporations, by corporations that impact decision makers and elections. I think the world is really scary and it's going to a scary phase where we need to look at things globally, not even at the regional level, and how big corporations, how they influence politics, and how politics influences the gas production, the weapon production, the mass destruction elements and tools production. What is happening currently in Gaza? This should open the eyes on all levels of the world. If they really care about climate change, and we've seen lots of demonstrations in COP this year about, well, if you care about the climate, then you should care about Gaza as well. I mean, the amount of destruction is not only about Gaza. The amount of destruction is carbon emissions from aircrafts. It's about utilizing chemical weapons that basically also they are transboundary. They would kill the fish in the Mediterranean, possibly if they are poisonous. They would pollute shared water resources between Palestinians and Israelis. It's not about only human security and the impact of, you know, the conventional security levels. It's really beyond, and it really worries me where the world is going at the moment.
If you agree now, Nada, I would like to talk about coexistence and cooperation. You mentioned it a little bit before. So coexistence and cooperation are one of the main focuses of Abramundi. And so I would like to know how you deal with that issues in your job as Palestine director of a transregional NGO. So you mentioned you have Israeli and Jordanian colleagues. You work on both local and regional levels, local and regional projects, and you are traveling abroad. You have been part of several Palestinian-Israeli groups, including the One Voice movement and the Palestinian-Israeli Young Entrepreneurs Forum. So coexistence, proactive, intercultural dialogue is something that you are practicing every day, we can say, despite the ongoing war. You mentioned the policy-making level, but what do you think about the idea of peace achievable thanks to civil society? But because NGOs are working both from a civil society perspective, addressing issues to the policy-making level.
This is certainly something that we do on a day-to-day basis, and with EcoPeace having 3 offices based in Ramallah and Tel Aviv, daily interaction in terms of developing projects and activities and programs. So we are a group of around 60 people, 60 staff, 20 in each office. And the amount of interaction is on a daily basis to, as I mentioned, to prepare for things and to prepare for material, to design activities, which we work extensively on the national level to prepare our participants, especially when it comes to educational activities. We work on the national level to prepare our participants to go to the next level, to meet on a regional level of the participants from the 3 countries. And there we tend to put aside all our emotions of despair and frustration of the current reality. Not that we are negligent to them, but we want to sit together in the same room and be able to hold meaningful conversations about our own future and our ability to collaborate on environmental issues. In the sense, again, that we preserve our national interests, but as well as look into the mutual gain that we would take from these collaborations. And to be honest, even during these very difficult times, we were able to convene regional events and regional education activities of I think, let's calculate correctly, I think 50 and another 60, 120 participants from the 3 countries.
Wow.
Third, gathered on in 2 events in this past, in 2024, to learn together about negotiation skills, simulation, building projects together, innovative ideas to address common environmental concerns. They competed against each other, but also they worked in groups. So building this community and this network of people is something very essential to work from the bottom up. But also it's important to look into the future. And one of the important things that we are currently also addressing is the future of the region in the day after the war. And this is something that we continue discussing with our stakeholders, with political experts, economic experts, and development experts. On the local level, of course, in our 3 countries, but also on a regional level and international level, because everyone now is talking about the future of Gaza, the future of the 2-state solution. What do we do when the Trump administration is on board? How does the region look like after the Syria revolution? And there's a lot of talk about the Abrahamic Accords and the future of the Abrahamic Accords and the Israeli, Saudi, and Arab normalization. And then there's the bigger picture of this India-Middle East economic corridor, which also several European countries are behind, are interested in. So exactly. So what we're looking at is also trying to collaborate together to look into catalytic projects where they bring interest to the 3 countries. They bring geopolitical stability. These projects are in desalinated water from the region and green energy and clean energy production and export from the Middle East to Europe through Gaza and through Israel, transport and sustainable transport between the countries. All these ideas and these catalytic projects that we're working on, they are co-designed. They address the needs for the Palestinians for finding or establishing a continuous Palestinian state between the West Bank and Gaza, their dream of a self-sustained economy and state, and they look into geopolitical stability, they look into potential investments from GCC countries, developments from the European Union in the region, especially that they're interested in green hydrogen and renewable energy from the Middle East, considering that they're now shifting from Russian gas to renewables, and their dream of repower Europe and their plans for 2050 as the European Green Deal. So there's various elements on a global international level where there's clear interest for Palestinians and Israelis and Jordanians to engage in meaningful projects that address climate resilience and climate adaptation. And these come in the form of water and energy projects on the ground, which we as an organization are very much involved in terms of the thinking, at least as an NGO that brings out of the box ideas, which potentially our leaders at this stage of all what is happening around us, it's potentially not under their priority. But we put it as a solution to be a priority, as a gateway to a long-term, stable, and sustainable region. So this is our role, basically, to think short-term, to addressing the current issues, educate, to involve people, but also to look into a broader picture and broader solutions.
So you evoked yourself the broader perspective about, the future of the region, evoking all the different projects you mentioned. You call them catalytical projects. Regarding them, in that respect, would you say that the MENA region is ready for another narrative? You evoked yourself, you mentioned it, that you're thinking as part of the work of your NGO about the what will happen after the war. So what do you think?
Is it ready for another narrative? In my opinion, I don't think that there needs to be a ready moment. I think this is an ongoing process where we all need to feed into the process with all possible ways. Yes, the current circumstances are horrific on the ground. We, at least when we look into Gaza and the apocalypse that is happening there, one would think, what are these people talking about? One would think this is not the right time to speak about these issues and about long-term plans and a railway that connects the Emirates with the port of Gaza. People would think that it is a dreamy way to think that Gaza would export energy produced in Saudi Arabia to Greece. But I see this not happening if we wait until the right moment enables us to do this thinking. There's no right moment for thinking outside the box. There is a moment where we need to see that it's a catastrophic moment and it's a horrific moment that we do not want to continue, we do not want to repeat. And therefore the solution is to think outside the box and to look into a transformed Middle East and MENA region. And yes, the current political dynamics don't look good on the ground. They're taking us anywhere positive. But I think there's really good elements that we can build on. There's changes in the economic and the geopolitical scene that we can embark on to make this happen. If not tomorrow, then it's the day after tomorrow.
Before I ask my last question, I would like to evoke with you the topic of feminism, because a lot of women are holding management positions in regional institutions or NGOs in the MENA region. A lot of peace and intercultural movements are led by women. Do you think that the issue of peace, dialogue, cooperation, or integration are feminists? And if so, if they contribute to feminine independence or even maybe emancipation, women emancipation in the MENA region?
I think gender mainstreaming and women mainstreaming in the context of leadership in environmental issues and also peace building issues is very underrepresented, especially in the MENA region. And I wish there are more young could actually be empowered to have decision-making abilities and to be enabled to embark on these issues. There's actually a study that was conducted a couple of years ago by the Geneva Water Hub on women in leadership and decision-making positions in the MENA region. And the numbers are really disappointing. The numbers of women in this field is very low, possibly for, I don't know, is it cultural? Is it, I don't know what the reason is, but definitely I think also the mix of women in water diplomacy is very, very important, because I think women in water and environmental issues are the ones who are able to really feel things and feel needs on the ground. They understand what they need for their household, generally speaking. Not saying that men don't do dishes, but with the laundry, but women are, especially in the MENA region and in African regions, you see that women are those who are responsible for collecting water for the community. So they are the ones who should be involved in policy making and policy change, and especially when it comes also to conflict and negotiating water issues. Because I also think if we didn't have so many men and greedy men in power, we wouldn't have seen so much killing and so much injustice and so many wars around the world. I think even in the Western, civilizations and Western communities.
I agree completely with you.
I just hope that one day, at least my kids and my daughters will live in a better world. I'm very lucky that I'm surrounded by 60 wonderful people from the 3 offices in Palestine and Israel and Jordan who are willing to take a step That is very challenging. What we're doing is not something really easy, but I'm really glad that I'm surrounded at least by this little bubble and with the hundreds of people, of course, of participants and supporters and stakeholders and donors who are enabling us to plant a seed to make a change and to at least look at things differently. So hopefully the results will be seen in my lifetime, but at least for my own children.
This is completely the feeling that I have, that Ecopeace is a pioneer in a way, that it is showing the way in the MENA region since, so you are Palestine director, the Jordan director is a woman as well, and the Israel director is a man. So you are showing the way for other NGOs in the region.
Our board of directors, more than half of the board of directors is also women. So also very proud.
Yeah. It's a good example. And so to finish our interview, Nada, this is the last question I'm asking to all of my guests. If you could make 3 wishes for the MENA region in 10 years, if you had a magical stick, what would your 3 wishes be? So please tell us.
First wish would be end the war, and this is not 10 years from now. It should happen yesterday or a year ago. Should have happened long time ago. So my wish is, first of all, end the war and the violence and all this misery. And my second wish would be ending the occupation and Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security and prosperity alongside with the state of Israel.
So shared prosperity.
Shared prosperity for everyone here in the region. And my third wish would be that we really have meaningful achievements on the ground that address climate change issues. And that the MENA region becomes an example for the entire globe and internationally, that we, the ones who basically were in the worst maybe conflict and long conflict in history, are able to set example for collaboration on climate issues. This would be
your third wish.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nada. I must say that it's been a very challenging and demanding conversation. We are not seeing things from the same perspective, and still I can see how we can find common goals, how our views can converge towards so many ideas, the idea of cooperation, of peace building, and of shared prosperity. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be a guest on this Abra Talks conversation. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow Abramundi on our social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as on our WhatsApp channel. Stay tuned and see you soon.